Bruce, thanks for being on the show with us tonight, man.
Oh, joy being here. Joy being here.
Yeah, it's
We
our pleasure.
appreciate it. We know you had some dogman encounters, and you said possibly a Bigfoot encounter on when you emailed us. And also, we know that you were in law enforcement for quite some time. Is that correct?
Right. You can see if it shows my uniforms up here.
Okay. Why don't you give us and the listeners a little bit of a background on yourself and all that?
I'm a retired law enforcement officer, hurt in the line of duty. Started out as a patrolman, sergeant of patrol, detective, and then went from detective to chief of narcotics. And then after I got hurt in the line of duty, I started doing cryptid investigations stemming from my law enforcement career, where I had encounters with cryptids. So that's basically about it. I've got to get this thing.
All good.
Can y'all see me fine?
Yep. All good.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah, you've got extensive background there doing all that. So what triggered you to get into the cryptid side of things? I guess what you experienced. I mean, do you want to just start from the beginning and tell us all the things that's happened to you and what is such a...
My father was in the military, and he's from Tennessee. And when we would take our vacations, we would come back to my grandmother's house here in Middle Tennessee. And my first encounter, I was 8 years old. I was out in the hayfield trying to fly a kite. I couldn't get it in the air. I get it a few feet and it'd come down and crash. So after several attempts of that, I noticed that 3 apes had come out in the field watching me. Now, keep in mind, I was 8 years old. My father watched Wild Kingdom. We watched it with him. And it was to an 8-year-old, there were apes. And after I couldn't get my kite up, I took it back in and told my grandmother. Couldn't get my kite up. She said, "Well, you have no tail on it." So she ripped a sheet, an old bed sheet. She made me 3 lengths of tail and tied them together in knots. Said, "Take that back out and try it." So I took that out there and tried it. And I got them 2 or 3 attempts. I got it back in there. At that time, what I was calling apes had gone back into the woods. There was a creek right through the woods there. And then they come back out after I got the kite in the air the second time, and they were watching the kite, wasn't really paying attention to me. And so I flew the kite there for 45 minutes or so. And then I had went back in and was telling my grandmother about me seeing the apes out there in the field flying my kite. And she explained to me in the state of Tennessee there weren't any apes. And I was like, "Well, I watched them on Wild Kingdom with Daddy, and those were apes." And she said, no, son, they're not apes. And so a couple weeks later, we went to check on my great-grandmother, who was a Cherokee Indian. And evidently my grandmother had said something to her while I was outside playing. And she called me in the house and set me down at the table and explained to what I had seen was hairy men. And she told me the story that was passed down to her from her grandfather, that how these things had come in after they'd went out on hunting parties and brought meat in and hung on a lodgepole, that they'd have to have members of the tribe guard the meat pole and keep animals and stuff from getting their meat. And that one particular night, something had come in and killed 2 of their men and took the meat. So they set out on a tracking party to find out what it was. And then they had got into a battle with these hairy men. And a couple more of the members of her tribe or her clan were killed. And they were able to kill a hairy man and retrieve the meat. So from there, still wasn't buying the story because I'd watched Wild Kingdom with my daddy. So in respect, I didn't talk back to her. Then I was just 8 years old. And my second encounter was I was 13 years old, and we had gone down to the Cumberland River in the backwaters of the Cumberland River. Me and my parents, a couple of my siblings, and we were fishing. And on the other side of this backwater, we seen uh, another three that come out, but one was considerably smaller. And I watched them while I was catching bluegill, and they had left and went back in to the cattails, and on the backside of the cattails were the big woods that went for a pretty good ways. This was Army Corps of Engineer property. So I had walked around to the backside and crossed over a little creek to come over on the side they were on fishing. And I was catching bluegill. We was using the bobber and worms, and I was catching bluegill. And this little one comes out, gets fairly close to me, 40 or 50 yards, and he's just standing there watching me. So I'm just as amazed as him as he is me. And as I was catching my bluegill and pitching them down on the ground, I noticed he kept looking at the bluegill on the ground. So I decided to listen to my great grandmother, who said, "You take something for the land, leave it something." And she said, "If you run across these hairy men again, uh, leave something for a truce offering." So that happened, and running through my mind and thinking of those things. And just out of curiosity, I picked one of the bluegill up and underhanded it what was a 13-year-old could underhand, probably 20, 25 feet. And the little one was standing there watching me fishing. And he just walks up and bends down and picks this bluegill up and walks back into the woods, through the cattails and back into the woods. And that was the end of that encounter. A few years later, I had two more encounters. And then when I was in my upper teens, I hunted on a man's property who was a schooling superintendent of Putnam County, Tennessee. And they had a school bus several miles from me that between 6:20 and 6:30 in the morning, they would see two bears cross the road, a mama bear and a baby cub. Well, back then there weren't any bears in that part of the country. So he'd got a hold of me, wanted me to go talk to the bus driver. The kids were telling people at school, and that's how he got a hold. The school principal called him about it. So he got a hold of the bus driver and recommended me. And so I went to see the bus driver, which I knew. He was a good man, elderly gentleman. And I went and talked to him, and he told me, he said, "Bruce, every morning about 6:20 at this spot, between 6:20 and 6:30, that this bear and cub crossed the road." And so I knew the landowner at that particular spot. He was a park ranger. And so I get with him, and we're talking about it that day. As soon as I'm told about it, I get with him, and we're talking. He wants to go that night and see if we can see it or call it up. I had a Johnny Walker game caller with a rabbit squeal. So I took it. His nephew wanted to go. Well, his nephew's father worked for Ford Motor Company. He had a brand new 4-wheel drive truck. and he offered us to take that. So we went up to this park ranger's land, and keep in mind, a couple of weeks before that, he had moved his cattle down closer to the farm next to me because he had a couple of them that come up killed, and so uh, this young boy that wanted to go with us, his father uh, let us use his truck, and that was the park ranger's brother-in-law. So that would have been this little boy, the park ranger's nephew. He was 17, 18 years old. So we go up there after dark. I've got my Johnny Walker game collar, and we cut on a rabbit squeal. We're running a rabbit squeal, and we're there just for a few minutes. Now, when we pull into this property, we go through the gate, and we leave the gate open because the cows had been moved. And we back into the upper side of the barn where we could see the field behind the barn. And while we were getting set up, plugging our spotlight into the cigarette lighter in the truck, we left the young gentleman in the truck to make sure that our spotlight didn't come out of the cigarette lighter, and let him operate the collar. It had a 50-foot cord on it with a big speaker that we had set out on top of the cab of the truck. And also on top of the cab of the truck, we had brought several weapons. He had a 30-06. I was shooting a 22 rifle. We had two 22 rifles, double barrel shotgun, a 30-06, and I want to believe we had a 243. And we were sitting there calling. After about 15 minutes, we seen some movement right there behind the barn. So we flipped the spotlight on, and it was a coyote. We were fixing to. I had Mr. Shanks, who was the park ranger, to hold the spotlight, and I took a beat on the coyote, fixing to shoot the coyote, and we heard this just terrible scream and crashing coming right inside the woods, right outside the field there. So I said, "Hold up, let's see what this is." And we waited there, and we could hear trees breaking. Just a low beller, just like a big bull beller.
Hey, Bruce,
And
can you
then,
hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
There's some crackling going on, and we're trying to figure out if it's on our end or your end. I think it might be your end. It could be your earbuds. Um,
Earbuds.
is there any way you could unplug them
Yeah,
or try to adjust them?
yeah. Let me.
It's happened before, and it's been on our end before, but we've tried to change our headsets, and it's just not us.
Okay. Is that any better?
I'm still hearing the crackling. You hear it, Brian? It's like when you talk, I hear this.
Okay.
Try it. Can
Let
you
me
can you do
unplug
it
them.
without them? Can you hear us without them?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let me turn this volume up. Maybe I had the volume too high. Volume may have been too high. Let's try
That
this
might have
again.
been.
How about now?
That sounds.
Any?
Yeah, I don't hear it now.
Okay, I've had it. The volume was too high.
There we go.
All right, that's it.
Okay. All right. You remember
So
where
we're
you're
back.
at? You're talking about, I think, your first dogman encounter or something, the coyote or something. I'll splice this
No,
out. I'll
we.
fix this. This is all just
Okay.
recorded, so I'll splice it, make it sound right. So
Okay.
sorry about that, buddy.
We were backed into the barn. Did y'all get that part? Backed into the upper side of the barn.
Go a little bit prior to that, I think.
Go back to the lake where we were fishing.
Yeah.
Okay. At the lake where we were fishing at was the backwaters of the Cumberland River. We could see these three I considered as apes, I was 13 years old, come out and was watching us and just middling around there. And they left and went back into the cattails, and the cattails, backside of the cattails were big woods. So we went in, though after they went in the woods, a few minutes, I walked around. This is the backwaters of Cumberland River, so I walked around across the little creek and went on the side that they were previously on. And I started fishing, catching bluegill. Well, as I was catching these bluegill, I was dropping them on the ground. Well, this juvenile Bigfoot walks out, and he's standing 30 yards from me, and he's watching me. And that every time I catch a bluegill and throw it on the ground, he would look at that bluegill on the ground. So I got to thinking what my grandmother said, about leaving something for the land. Whatever you take, leave something. So without thinking of that, I again caught another bluegill, pitched it on the ground. He was watching it. He was watching it flop on the ground there. So just out of curiosity, from what my great grandmother said, I picked one of them up and just underhanded throwed it towards him, which at 13 years old probably wasn't over 20 or 25 feet. Well, he walked down and bent down and picked that bluegill up, and then turned around and walked back in the cattails and went on into the woods. And that was the last of that encounter. I hadn't seen him again. Well, then I was hunting a piece of property that belonged to the school superintendent of Putnam County, Tennessee. And I was a young man. And the bus driver there was, every morning the kids and him were seeing a bear and a bear cub cross the road. And as they got to school, they were telling the teachers and stuff about it. So when they questioned the bus driver about it, he told what he had seen. Well, the school superintendent of the Putnam County school systems knew me personally from hunting on his land, and I lived real close to him. So he advised them to contact me, and instead of them contacting me, he decided to contact me and told me the bus driver's name, and which I knew the bus driver knew where he lived. So I went down and talked to him, and he told me that at about 6:20 to 6:30 every morning, this bear and bear cub crossed the road in this one particular spot. Well, I knew the landowner of that place where he was talking about, and the landowner was a Mr. Shanks. He was a park ranger for Edgar Evans State Park, and that was his farm. So I contacted him to let him know that the school superintendent notified me to go in and check and see if it was check these bears. Well, there haven't been any bears in that part of the country in 100 years. So I go and talk to the school bus driver. He tells me, yep, every morning between 6:20 and 6:30, it crosses the road there, a bear and a bear cub. So I get with a park ranger who owns the farm that this is happening on, and he decides he wants to go that night. It's intriguing to him. He wants to go that night. While I'm talking to him, his nephew is also there. He's a 17, 18-year-old boy. He wants to go. Well, his daddy is the park ranger's brother-in-law. His daddy's married to the park ranger's sister. Now, the brother-in-law of the park ranger works for Ford Motor Company, and he's driving a brand new Ford four-wheel drive truck. If we take his son, he's going to take him out on a night hunt like that. He's going to let us use his vehicle. So we started out shortly after dark. It was extremely cold. It was in January. Uh, I would say about the 28th, 29th of January. 17 degrees that night. So we go up there, and the cattle that was on the farm, the Mr. Shanks, who was a park ranger, had moved him cattle 2 weeks before that because he had 2 cows that come up dead. That was unusual to him. They're perfectly healthy cattle, and so we went from there, and we met up 7:30, 8 o'clock, winter time. You know, it'd been dark for a couple hours, and we pulled into the barn, which is the barn. The pound lot of the barn was muddy and frozen at the same time. And so we backed into the upper side of the barn where we could see the field in behind the barn. So I had a Johnny Walker game caller. We run a cassette called a Squealing Jackrabbit Call. And I run it, and I had the young man that we let him drive his father's truck. It was a brand new truck, so we let him drive the truck. And his job was to keep our spotlight plugged into the cigarette lighter and to run our game caller. Run it 10 minutes, cut it off, and wait for us to tell him to run it back. So we was running that game caller, and we had a coyote come in. We could see something in front of us in the field. So we had a coyote come in. So I reached and I grabbed the .22 rifle, and off the hood of the truck, we had laid a quilt up there to keep from scratching this man's new truck up. And then the park ranger, he had the spotlight. He was holding the spotlight. So I told him to cut it on. I got a bead on the coyote, fixing to pull the trigger, and we hear all this screaming, this low bellowing, sounds like a massive bull. And we hear all this brush and trees and stuff getting tore down and tossed. It was obvious there was something like that. We thought, well, okay, you know, it could be a bear. There's no bear been seen in that area in 100 years. So I told him, I said, let's wait a minute before I shoot this coyote, and said, let him step out and let's see what we're dealing with. Because if it's a bear, it's against the law for us to kill it. And it's got a cub with it. You surely don't want to kill it. So all this commotion is going on, and it's just a terrible scream, nothing like a bear would do. And we waited with a game collar on. It stepped out in this field and just let out a terrible roar, and it was clearly not a bear. It was, I would say, between 8 and 9 feet, or just a big, hairy monster. Well, it lets out another couple roars. By this time, the park ranger has grabbed his 30-06, and I have grabbed my high-powered rifle, and he was holding the spotlight with one hand and resting the 30-06 on against that spotlight, holding it up there. And this thing just tore out running towards us, and it covered quite a bit of ground in just a few seconds. And it got within 20 feet of us, or 20 yards, more or less, and it stopped, and we were fixing to take a shoot, but it let out this scream like we've never heard before, and it shocked our bodies. We could feel a jolt go through your body. And we couldn't shoot. We couldn't pull the trigger. We were frozen. It's not that we were scared or shocked, or whatever it put out locked us up. It locked our muscles up. So we weren't able to get a shot off. And then it started coming at us. Well, the young boy in the truck could see it through the rearview mirrors. Back then, you had big rearview mirrors on pickup trucks, and he could see it. and it terrified him. And he took off in the truck with us standing in the back of it. And when he took off, of course, it threw us down in the truck bed, and I was halfway hanging over the tailgate, fixing to fall out, when Mr. Shanks grabbed me and pulled me back in. So this boy comes out into the barnyard and through the gates, makes a left and going down the road. We're trying to find our guns. By then, we have dropped our guns. We're just trying to hang on. And we're going down the road at 30, 35 mile an hour. This is not a very good road. It's a dirt road with gravel. And so the truck is swaying. Well, when we get around a curve, we're starting to pick up speed. Well, I heard this growl, and when I looked up, this thing was probably 20 or 30 yards behind the truck running us. And it was just massive. He was mad. We provoked it, and unintentionally. And we made it back to Mr. Huddleston's house, which was Mr. Shanks's brother-in-law. The son jumps out and he runs in the house. Mr. Huddleston comes out and he talks to us. We told him what we seen and stuff. And then as we're telling him what we seen, the son, the mother runs out and says, something's wrong with the son. Something bad wrong with him. So we run in the house and he's in shock. And he's terrified that this thing has followed him home. It was a monster to him. And clearly a Bigfoot. None of us were well educated about Bigfoot, Sasquatch at that time. And was the last thing we thought we'd see anyway. So we could all agree it was a monster. And after we get him calmed down somewhat, he's still in shock. His mama makes us hot chocolate, and I'm telling the park ranger who owns the farm that this happened on. I said, we got to go back because we had our guns laying on the cab of the truck, and they fell off. And we need to go back to the truck and look in the bed with our lights and retrieve our guns. When we went back outside to retrieve our guns, they weren't all there. So we knew that the guns fell off before we got out of the barnyard. So I told him, I said, let's go back and get the guns. He said, I'm not going back. And I said, well, we have to go back. It's your property. I mean, you got to go back. And I said, we got to get those guns. And so we sat around there until about, I think at wintertime, it got good and daylight, overcast day come up on us. It was clear that night, but it was overcast that morning. So we waited comfortably till about 7:30 or 7:45 to where we were satisfied we'd be all right. But again, we went back heavily armed. We found one of our guns. The stock had been busted on it. And then one of the other guns had fell off going down the road in that curve. So we were just dealing with something that we didn't quite understand. And then I went back a couple of days later by myself, and I made sure I had a pistol on me, and I made sure I had a 12-gauge shotgun with slugs. So I went in there, and there was tracks in the barnyard, and the tracks were massive, 21 inches long, 8 inches to 10 inches across. And I know when it steps in mud, it makes a bigger track than it actually is. I was wearing a number 10 boot, and I put my boot sideways in that track and had room left on each side of the track. And then when we measured it, it would come out to 21 inches. So we figured with the mud and stuff, a good 20 inches was the length of it. So I went on up into the woods by myself, and I found where it had come down a hill that was slate rock, but on top of that slate rock was black soil. You could clearly see these giant footprints. Trees the size of as your leg were snapped in half and twisted. Then we had a couple that was broken completely off, clear, about 8 foot tall, and were just stabbed in the ground at the edge of the field. So that encounter uh, shook us a little bit, and then from there I had other encounters, uh, which involved dog men, stuff like that. Well, back then they were called werewolves, and I've had another encounter, and then it got pretty bad. We had 7 come off of a ridge in the middle of nowhere, and they weren't aggressive. And I was trying to figure out why that this one acted like he did, and the others weren't aggressive. They were more curious about us. And then there was a big female in that bunch, and she was more not as scared, or more what you'd say cautious or aggressive. So she was easier to deal with and showed herself more. And then from there we went to uh, another piece of property after that incident, and again run into another one. But nothing like that happened again, as far as what happened at that barn that night. And then I went on to the Cumberland River and had the opportunity to meet 7, which the female Sasquatch, the older female Sasquatch in the bunch, was the leader, not the male. So she was more apt to try to communicate and wasn't scared of us, but more intrigued of me. So I was able to build a relationship with her over a couple years, and to the point to where we could basically sit on the same rock or little bluff 5 feet apart. And the males would get aggravated, and she would talk in some kind of I call it gibberish, but then they would back up. So I started gifting them pecans. Pecans weren't native there in Tennessee, and I had got them from my mama's kitchen cabinet, and actually my grandmother's kitchen cabinet, and started gifting them the pecans, and they become more calm. They weren't aggressive, and so from there I gifted them blackberries, uh, pawpaws. I gifted them pawpaws. They love pawpaws, and I developed a relationship with them over 3 years, and then they just one day I went down there and they was gone. We had some kind of a dialogue. I couldn't speak their language, but I knew what they were meaning when they certain words they said, and that was timber company come in there and cut the edge down to the Corps of Engineers property, which is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And they had moved from there and went approximately 5 miles up the river into a little community called Rock City. And in Rock City, the river run on the backside of the community a mile or so. So I was able to take a boat and go through there and making my calls, and got an answer. And the first one to greet me was the female Sasquatch, the older one. she's a lot older, and we're able to build a relationship again, and that lasted another couple years, and then life happens to us. I had to go back to a full-time job. Didn't get to go as much I wanted to. And then at some point there on the Corps of Engineers, they allowed that property to be timbered. And then 6, 8 months later, after that was timbered, I went up and down the river and called for them, but never had a encounter again with that bunch. So that was a harrowing thing. I had taken people with me. One gentleman, the first gentleman I took with me, I let him see them at a distance because I didn't know how they were going to react to him. I knew how they would react to me. And when they seen him, they began throwing rocks, but not at us to hit us, but they were mostly throwing them at him, beside and in front of him. And that was enough for him. He took off running and went back to the vehicle and waited on me. And I stayed down there another hour or so with him. Went back to the vehicle and asked him why he did that. He said he just never seen nothing like that, and it scared him. And I said, well, I told you, just stay calm and stay behind me. And if they accept you, then there would be no problems. But he didn't want to. He didn't want to believe what he actually seen. He didn't want to talk about it. He was basically in shock for a few days, and he come to me and he said, Bruce, I mean, you lost your mind fooling with these things. They're massive. They'll kill you. And from there, I went to uh, the Warrior's Path that runs through the state of Tennessee. And I started working Fentress County, Pickett County, Overton County, of course, Putnam County, uh, Wilson County, Smith County, and had several encounters there, and all those. But my most encounters involved the Warrior's Path, which was later named by Daniel Boone as the Kentucky Path. And so if you look it up on the map, you'll see the Warrior's Path was later named after 1804, the treaty was named to Kentucky Road, Kentucky Path. And that's where Daniel Boone shot a rogue Bigfoot that had attacked his son, was in the Pickett County area. And back then, Kentucky and Tennessee state lines weren't drawn. Kentucky was become a state before Tennessee, and it was considered wild country. And in that particular area off the Warrior's Path was several Indians. Different tribes used that. They traveled back and forth to Florida, Georgia, and places. So it was somewhat of a truce area. They didn't war on that Warrior's Path. So the Cherokee, the Creek, Shawnee, several different ones that used that. So I started doing a lot of research there, and then I tracked two who weren't afraid of me, and then I tracked two to a cave, and then realized that they were using sticks to make markings or words. I come to a cave, and they had sticks in Y shapes, and then in front of that cave they had crosses from I would call dead trees. I had a couple footprints in that, and then I had an old ancient fire pit just right inside that cave. And those spelt out with those sticks, I didn't enter it. and I had two fresh Bigfoot tracks going into it by two different big feet. So from there, I went around that bluff and found another place and actually got a massive footprint, a lot bigger than the two that I had been following. And then from there, I had run into what was called a werewolf or a dog man. And the old people, my grandparents, my great grandparents, and the neighbors that I talked to in the communities, in the Buffalo Valley community of Putnam County, told me that if you've seen a lion with a big mane around its neck, don't talk about it because somebody in the family would become sick or die. And so I had went around and talked to other elderly people in the community, and they would talk about having hogs, cattle sick and stuff, and these animals would cure them. These creatures would cure their livestock, so they didn't really want to talk about it. And other than they were hairy men, they considered them hairy men. Bigfoot and Sasquatch just wasn't part of their vocabulary back then. And then I got into dogmen, which dogman's a werewolf, but the term dogman I learned later. And then I started having encounters with dogmen. And I had some very, very hairy encounters, you call it, and especially the one that I named Laser Eyes. This was a dog man creature that I believed would attack me if he'd have sensed fear. He followed me out of the woods. When I got to the top of the hill, there's a 4-foot woven wire fence with 2 strands of barbed wire. So I'm going to guess it was between 5.5 to 6.5 feet tall. But when I stepped across that fence, as an old, wasn't old, it was fairly used ATV 4-wheel drive trail. So I got on that trail and walked that trail. And the whole time I walked the trail, I wasn't in no hurry. I was looking back. Well, when this dog man got to the fence, he just stepped across it like me and you would step across a toy in the floor. It was just like the fence wasn't there. So he had the red, I call laser eyes. It produced a laser. So I made it on up around, and he was following me. And by this time, I was wearing forestry BDUs, fireproof BDUs. They were double pocket with zippers. I unzipped one zipper, reached in my pocket, and unzipped another zipper, and pulled out my pistol. From there, I cut into a sapling thicket where an old house was. When I got into the old house didn't have any windows or doors on it. It was falling down. So I positioned myself into a corner to where I could see the windows and the doors. I stayed there a good 30 minutes. Nothing happened. No noise outside. Nothing of that. So I eased back out, and when I come around the corner of the house, he was standing in a briar thicket with young saplings. So I eased back to the left and got back on that trail where it was open, where I could see, and he shadowed me. He walked beside of me, and then I would take a few steps and stop. He would also stop, but I could see those lights, those 2 laser lights on my clothes. And I was in camouflage with a solid pair, camouflage shirt with a solid pair of forestry fireproof pants on BDUs. So as I'd step along, he'd step along, but he didn't hide. He stayed out in the open, constantly looking at me. So I was talking out loud, letting, just talking out loud, and knowing not to show any fear. I think if I'd have showed fear, he'd attack me. So as I get back out to where I can see the car, I get to the car, and I turned around to look back, and I didn't see him. And then as I was getting in the car, then I seen him again, but this time he was closer to me. I first seen him probably 20 feet from the front bumper of my car, me being that 20 feet, and he was probably a good 10 yards, 5 to 10 yards. So I get in my car, and not wanting to wreck or anything else because your heart's pounding, I started the car up and left. I had to turn around and leave. And then with another encounter I had before that, I learned a valuable lesson on that one. I had come across a dog man pup in the woods. He was coming down a vine. So I stood there and watched him. The trail the deer trail I was following, I thought was exceptionally wide. It was 3 feet wide, and it was wore down to the dirt. And this pup was coming down the vine, just a ball of fur. Didn't know what it was. I walked up to it, looked at it. It was looking at me. I had a pair of gloves in my pocket, so instead of putting the gloves on, I had a pair of those leather tan gloves, ranch gloves, and I just held it in my hand and reached up and touched him, sort of tapped him a few times. He made no aggressive, no teeth showing, no growling or nothing. And then I was looking at him, so I reached up and I picked him up, and he got where I could get both hands on him. I picked him up and set him down on the ground, and from his elbows to his paws touched the ground. So his back legs were perfectly fine. And I noticed he had about a 3-inch tail that was bloody. Don't know whether he got it bit off, got into an accident, whatever that caused him to lose his tail. So from there, I'd set him in my lap, playing with him and looking at him. And when I raised his upper lips up, he had an exceptionally long canines. And then so I pulled the bottom lip down, and they were almost as long. And then looking into his mouth, he had black spots in his mouth. And he had a pink mouth, but there were black spots. So I raised the upper lip again looking, and I noticed a pouch right outside the upper lip. I turned him around to the other side and looked, he had a pouch in that side. So when he closed his mouth, I had a short snout, I held his snout down, and I raised that lip up, and them 2 bottom canines stuck right straight into those pockets, fit perfectly. So I fooled with him for about 10 minutes. And I realized, there's a mother here somewhere. And I pulled the fur back on his eyes, and he had clear eyes, marbles. It looked like you took 2 clear marbles and set in somebody's skull. There wasn't no pink around the eye. There wasn't no white around the eye. These were just clear, crystal clear marbles. Now, the skin, when it set back in the skull, the skin had a purple color to it. So from there, I fooled with him a little bit more. I petted him. He had no problems following me. I was worried about there's a mother here. I don't know what I'm dealing with. I know it's some kind of type of cryptid. So I set him back up on the tree. When I set him back up on the not the tree, but the grapevine, his claws come out, retracted, and hung the grapevine. And he just started easing right up the grapevine. So I decided, well, I'm going to go on around the hill and follow this trail. And I got around the hill and followed this trail. I heard some screaming, and it was a high-pitched scream. And so I went into another holler, crossed over that holler, and went into another holler, and went up the left-hand side of this holler. There, and at that time, I could sit down and rest. So I found this big flat rock there. I got up on the rock and was sitting there watching the rock. From the rock, I could hear the screaming coming down that holler in the creek bed. So I'm sitting there just a few minutes, and then I see it, and it's a big dog man. He's walking on fours. When he gets about even to me, but slightly to the left, he raises up and he looks just right at me, and I'm thinking I'm hid. So I go to get up to move behind a tree, and I just felt like my throat and stuff was closing. Couldn't breathe good. It's like I was having an allergic reaction, which I don't have allergic reactions. So I went and hid behind this big, massive poplar tree, and when I looked out the other side, he was looking right at me. And so my heart's pounding. I'd climbed this hill, and, my cardio was going. I said, well, if he gets any closer, he's going to hear my heart pounding, and he knows about where I'm at. So this time I decided to go straight up the mountain. So I stepped out to go straight up the mountain, and I got zapped. And what I mean by zapped, I felt like a bolt of lightning going through me, and my body locked up. I couldn't move. And so just over a few seconds, I could get my fingers, my feet, my legs and stuff to start moving, and my head to turn to see where he was at. And I couldn't see him. Mine was to go straight up that mountain and get to my vehicle. So I got up to the mountain. I had to cross a fence, and the farmer there had cut the hay that fall. So it was a fall cut. So hay wasn't over 5 inches tall, the grass where they cut the hay off of it. So I stayed in the middle of that field, and I kept my handgun in my hand. And when I got to the car, I'd walk every few feet, look, scan this massive hayfield. There's no way this thing can get across this hayfield without me seeing it. So I get to my car, and I either keep my cars under my floor mat, and plus I keep a beach towel laying in the front seat to keep my seats from getting dirty. And I had stuck the keys under the towel in the driver's seat. When I sat down in the car, I reached up under my thigh, pulling my keys out, and I just stuck them in the ignition. As soon as I turned the ignition, something big hit my car. So I look up, and here's this massive paw, and this paw has fingers like a man, but extremely long claws. And the car, by then I've got the car started, but the right arm on this thing has caught my mirror and has busted my mirror and has turned it down, the whole mirror casing down. And so my gun is laying in plain view in the passenger seat. When I got in, I stuck it over in the passenger seat. Well, when I went to reach over to get my gun, where he put his massive paw on my windshield started cracking. When it started cracking, that side, the driver's side of the car started pushing down. So I put it in reverse. I backed out, come out of there, went to the right, went straight home. We're talking 18 miles back to my house. And when I got there at the house, I cleaned the windshield off. It had slobbered on the windshield and on the driver's side. Of course, there's no gathering evidence there because I had to cut my windshield wiper fluid on the wiper blades to wipe the slobber off to see how to drive. So when I got back home, I cleaned my window off, and when I was coming up with my hand, cleaning the outside of the window, it had pushed the window in enough to where in that crack it would catch my paper towel and my finger, it would cut you. So I didn't think any more about that. And uh, later on that night, I've had a yard dog. He was a mountain fast. And he had a certain bark if somebody come in the driveway, pulled in the driveway. He had a certain bark for varmints, coons, anything getting a chicken house. It was a fox. He just had certain barks for everything. Well, he had this bark that says, "Hey, there's somebody out here." Well, it could be a family member, a friend coming to visit me. I just didn't see him turn in the driveway or heard him. So I go to the back door where he's barking at, and I open the main door. I push the screen door open, and he comes running between my legs in the house. Now, this dog is not a house dog. He just doesn't. This is completely out of his character. So he comes in and he does that. Well, everything. I cut the porch lights on. I go in and get a good flashlight. I go out there and shine it around. Nothing. Shut the back door. Nothing. So a few minutes, I let him out the front door. He was out the front door, and I walked him out there holding his collar and walked him out there on the porch to make sure that he just didn't take off running after whatever it was. And he was out there a good 15 or 20 minutes, and all of a sudden he just started screaming like something was tearing him apart. Again, out of character. This little dog would tackle anything. So I go out, and this time I've got my shotgun. I kept my shotgun in the corner of the wall behind the couch standing up. I walk out the door with my shotgun, and there's this dog man standing on his hind legs, and he's looking right at us. The dog has run by me and went in the house. So I step back in the house. I'm using a 20 gauge shotgun with rabbit and squirrel shot, which is a number 4 to a number 5, a number 4 to a number 6 shot. So while I'm in there, the dog starts going around to the inside of my rooms on the outside walls. It goes to the left, it goes to the right, then it goes back to my bedroom. He goes to a window, and he's sitting there at that window, and he's sort of doing a low growl and whining. He backs up, he sits down. That window faces the north, and then in just a minute, he went to the other window that faces the east, doing the same thing. So I said, well, this thing's outside the window, circling the house, and there's no way I can get out there without being seen. So I go ahead and go anyway. Got a good bright flashlight. I slip out the back door, step around the corner of the house, flip the light on, and there he is at the north window again, and I shoot him. Well, he takes off on all fours and crosses my garden and goes down in this big set of woods. This woods runs for a good 5 miles, and the dog stays in another few more minutes, and he's antsy. He wants back out, so I let him back out. And I stayed up the rest of the night, and got daylight. I made my coffee. I walked out there on the front porch about 6:30 to 7:30. We had a glider rocker on the front porch. I sat down in the glider rocker drinking my coffee. Well, I heard this scream again coming from the woods across the other side of my garden. So I know he's not left. And I had bought a fresh box of 243 high-powered rifle shells a couple days before that. So I had walked down across the garden in the woods and got the sun was coming up from the east, shining west. So I had got to the shady side of a big tree, and then I seen him. So I went back to the house and got my rifle, reached back in the door and got my rifle, put my box of shells in the back, and my rifle held 3 rounds. So I walk back down there, and I get into behind another tree in the shade, camouflaging myself in. He shows himself again. Instead of this time shooting him, I shot around him. I shot the tree, I shot the ground beside of him. Well, he took off down the holler a little bit further, and he climbed the tree. And when he climbed the tree, I just started shooting up in the tree and hitting the side of the tree, and he around him. Well, he bailed out of that tree, and he went to another tree a few more yards down till he got into a creek, and we had a big spring branch there. And when he got into that spring, I had a clear shot on him. So this time I just started shooting the water and splashing upon him, and he took off again. And he got so far down and cut back into another holler, and then I slipped over the top of the ridge to cut him off, and I seen him cross another ridge, and then that was the last time I had pushed him out of the area. So that took care of that incident, and therefore, when I had laser eyes following me back to the car, I knew not to go back straight home from the first incident I had with the one that followed me home. So instead, I made a left when I come out of this particular place. Instead of making a right, going back towards my home, I made a left. I drove a few miles and come out into the state of Kentucky. I stopped at a convenience store, got me a cup of coffee, hung around, talked to them a few minutes, got in my car, and I took 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. It seemed like 17 different routes back to my house. I went through Tompkinsville, Kentucky, then I went through Gamel, Kentucky, then I went through Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee, and got back to my house to make sure that I didn't have another one following me home. Then we had another experience on a coon hunt that following year that backed up to the Standing Stone State Park in Overton County and Clay County. So I went into that one, and we were up there hunting, and we had the dogs come back. We heard this loud scream. I had a pretty good idea of what it was. The dogs come back. These other guys had never dealt with it. The dogs come back and passed us up. We don't know where they went. Well, we started having these loud screams, deep, what you call a wolf howl, and yapping like coyotes would, but it wasn't coyotes. So we had these coon hunter lights on. It's a battery pack on your back or your side, and the cord comes up behind your shirt, and your light was on a headband, and we were shook. We backed up to each other's back, and then one crossed a spring branch in front of us, and we got a clear view what it was. It clearly a dog man. So I told him, I said, we'll just stay to each other's back, 3 of us. We'll back out slowly, nobody shoot. Well, we get so far down, this guy sees, not the farmer, but other man hunting with us. The farmer, the landowner was with us. He was coon hunting with us. He sees these eyes in the top of this small cedar tree, and he just starts firing one after another. This thing jumps out of the cedar tree and takes down behind us, headed back towards his barn and house. Now, we can't take out after it because we've got dog men on the left of us and on the right of us. We don't know how many. We got 3 to 5 at one time there. So we make our way back to the barn, and this thing is howling, making these really, really deep, I call screams. And we get to the barn, and I tell the farm owner there, I said, what have you got in the barn? Because we're going to have to go in this barn, and we got to run this place off because your house is just right the other side of the barn, just a few yards. We got to get him out of here. And I don't know whether he was terrified, but he said, don't worry about it. Let's don't take that chance. I've got an old truck in there and a tractor and some hay. It's not worth going in there and getting hurt over. So we went back to his house there, and the dogs were at the house. They didn't stop when they got to the house. So I hung around with him, and me and another guy hung around with him till daylight, and everything was calmed down. Didn't hear nothing else. We could hear the howls way off in the distance, so they had left. And then a few weeks later, he calls me up and he said, "Hey, I got a neighbor down the road here, scared to death. He's seen one in broad daylight, and he won't come out of his house. Could you talk to him?" I said, yeah, I don't have any problems talking to him. So would you call him and let him know I'll come on down and talk to him? So he calls him and lets him know that I'll come. He said, yeah, sure, have him come down here. I'd like to speak to him. So get down there. He answered the door. He comes out, and he said that's the first time he's been out since it's happened. He'd been back he owned another spot, and his property backed up to the boundary of the Standing Stone State Park in Overton County, but we were on the Clay County side. So he goes up there to check on his cattle on his tractor, and he sees this thing, and had never seen nothing like it. He tries to describe it to me, and the way he said it looked and stuff, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know what it is. And he said, now I outrun it. He said, as soon as I seen it, I turned my tractor around and put it in high gear coming down that lane. And I said, no, you didn't outrun it. He probably just bluff charged you. You probably drove up on him and shook him, and he bluff charged you. So we went back. He was sitting there telling me all that. He said he hadn't been back up there to check on his cattle. And I said, would it be all right if I come back that night and bring a caller and see if we can call him? And we'll try to run him off your property. So he was all for that. So I showed back up there that night. We went up in that holler and called, and we got 3 sets of coyotes that answered us. And then we could hear one lone one way off in the back with a deeper, more piercing sound. So he come down, worked his way down, and I was like, these are coyotes. Let's just go back to your house. We'll sit on the front porch, and I'll run this game collar some more. So we get on the front porch, and I'm running the game collar, and we could hear him in the distance. And he started coming down the holler, but he only come so far and didn't come anymore. So a couple of hours went by, and nothing, no response. Well, his wife had cooked supper, and she had some fried chicken. She brought us out a plate of fried chicken. We were sitting there on the porch eating that fried chicken, and I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and hit this collar again. So I cut the collar on again, and we weren't hearing nothing. So I got through eating, and I had plates there were bones in it. I said, what do you want me to do with these bones? He said, pitch them in the yard. He said, I'm not going to the hog lot tonight. He said, ain't no way. You couldn't pay me enough money to go back there and throw them chicken legs out. So we threw them out there in the front yard. We were sitting there talking. Of course, the caller was extremely loud. The speaker's out in front of us, so we could talk. So we're sitting there talking, and all of a sudden we hear bones crunching. And he looks at me and he says, "You hear that?" And I said, "Yeah, I hear it." So I reached over and got my flashlight and shined it. It was a dog man. He was standing on his hind legs, eating them chicken bones. And I reached and got the gun and got the flashlight and cut the flashlight. And when I cut the flashlight, he didn't pay any attention to the flashlight. And he was just sitting there crunching them bones. But when I reached over and cut the Johnny Walker game collar off, he looked directly at us. When he looked directly at us, shined the light on him, he tore out running on all fours and he went up this maple tree in the corner of this farmer's yard. And this was a massive maple tree. This thing, probably a good 3 to 4 men holding arms just to reach around it. He went right straight up in the top of that thing. Well, I had my rifle, but I had left it in my car, my truck. And he had a 20 gauge pump gun. I had a pistol on me that I always carried on me. He had a 20 gauge pump and full of birdshot, number 8 birdshot. And this thing is all the way up in the top of the tree. We was gonna figure out, well, we got to get him run out of here. We can't leave him. So I said, let's step back here in a safe place, and we'll shoot. We'll shoot him. I mean, we're not going to kill him with birdshot, but we can burn him real good. So we get in a safe plot and start shooting. His wife comes out the door, won't know what the commotion, and we're doing all this shooting, and she sees it come down the tree, and just 8, 10, 15 feet, it makes a leap and hits the road. When it hits the road, it comes up on, in the little driveway, it comes up on 2 legs, and it's moving on. So I follow it with a flashlight, and she's getting to see it too. And after it goes up so far, it makes a right and goes into the woods. And we walk up there, and by this time, I had gone and got my high-powered rifle out of my vehicle, my truck. And we walked over to the edge of the woods, and nothing. He was long gone. And then a few days later, I talked to the farmer again, and he said, I've heard it way off in the distance, probably a mile, 2 miles, but it's never been back to the house. So that helped him. He's more comfortable going and checking his cows, but he did take a gun with him. He never would leave the house without the gun. So,
Wow, Bruce, you've got a lot of stuff going on, man. We've got a lot of questions, but we don't want to make this too long of an episode. But maybe we can bring you back on and talk more about what else you've had going on. We really appreciate you being here tonight with us.
yeah, I appreciate y'all having me.
Yeah, that was awesome.
You've had a lot more going on than probably any guest we've ever had on the show. So
I've had a lot of people tell me that I've had more encounters than most.
I would say so. Did these all happen in the same state?
Yes, state of Tennessee.
Okay.
I worked the Warriors Path. The Warriors Path goes through the state of Tennessee, up through Middle Tennessee, through Spencer, Sparta, goes up through Overton County, Livingston, Tennessee. It goes up through Fentress County, Pickett County, Monroe, Tennessee, and on into Kentucky. And that Warriors Path was used by several clans of Indians to travel. And I've had most of my encounters come off of the Warriors Path. The most exhilarating, strange encounters comes off the Warriors Path. If you'll go to one of my group sites, you'll see some caves that I had took pictures and videos of to show you ancient Indian
Tell us
fire
about
pits.
your group pages. Is that on Facebook?
Yes, you can get on
What
it.
are
It's
they
called
called?
Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures. It's
Okay.
Daryl Denton's group.
Oh yeah, we're on that one. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, we know Daryl.
yeah,
We've had him on the
yeah,
show. Yep, absolutely.
yeah. So
Cool.
I've got I've got tons more. But
Well, let's schedule another time to bring you back
Well,
on
yeah,
and
we'd
do
love to
another
have you
show.
back.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Down the
Oh,
road
yeah.
here, maybe sometime in the spring or something like that, and hear
Yeah,
more about your
yeah.
encounters and experiences. It's really cool that you're in law enforcement, or you were in law enforcement, and that you've experienced all that, and you're willing to talk about that too. We
Well,
really appreciate that as well. So,
a lot. I couldn't talk about it while I was in law enforcement, but
Oh yeah.
after law enforcement, well, what I didn't sign off on classifieds, I don't have to keep to myself anymore.
well, that's cool. Okay, well, we'll
Good.
definitely bring you back on and
Yeah.
talk about that. Whatever else you can
Absolutely.
bring up to us. So,
Yeah.
well, Bruce, thanks again for being with us, man.
Oh, I enjoyed it. I
We did
appreciate
too.
you guys.
Oh
Absolutely.
man, yeah, it was definitely our pleasure. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh,
We'll
no
be in,
problem.
stay
No
in
problem.
touch, and we'll be in touch, and we'll talk soon down the road. Sound
All
good?
right. All right. Sounds
sure.
good to me.
All right. Take
All
care,
right.
brother. Thank you
All
again,
right,
man.
Bruce. Thanks.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Y'all have a blessed night.
You too.
Bye bye.
Wow, man. What do you say?
That guy, holy smokes.
So I heard
He
him
has
on another
got
podcast,
a lot
and this
going
guy,
on.
like, wow. I mean, he's been. I think he's kind of like covert. They want him in that kind of the cryptid realm where he has to go like investigate that kind of stuff, and what have you.
Wow.
From what I've heard from him before, but a dogman puppy.
Yeah.
I want a dogman puppy. Let me raise a
Well, the
dogman
problem
puppy.
is they grow up.
I wonder if it had that little raccoon hands and all that stuff. We should have asked him that.
Oh yeah, we didn't get.
We're
to
gonna
that.
bring him
Well,
back on.
If we bring him back on, we'll get to that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to make these shows drag out to be 2-3 hours long, but
Right. Yeah.
anyway, it's awesome having him on, man, for
Yeah,
sure.
that was great.
And wow, the dogman thing. We're really trying to get more dogman encounters for you guys. I know you guys really like that. We said when we started this, it wasn't going to be all Bigfoot, but it's mostly Bigfoot because that's what people are seeing. But this dogman
Right.
thing
But
is getting
it's
out
getting
there.
bigger and bigger. Yeah.
It really scares me to know that these creatures are out there roaming around. But they are roaming around. People are seeing these things.
I know.
So I don't know where they're coming from or what they are, but I want to see one. But like I said, in the car or something like that. So
Yeah, but it's safe distance.
yeah.
If there is
Anyway.
a safe distance, as fast as these things are.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, we're definitely going to get him back on. We're going to get Bruce back on and talk more about that and what else he can tell us and what he's allowed to tell us at this point. It's
Absolutely.
not classified. So, Brian, my friend, it was awesome hanging out with you on this episode tonight, brother.
Always fun, brother. Always learning.
Listeners, thank you guys so much for being here with us. We could not do this without you. We would not be here without you. So thank you.
We wouldn't want to be.
And if you hadn't, no, we wouldn't. And if you've had an encounter, an encounter and want to come on the show, email us. Brian, what's that email, brother?
info@cryptidcreatures.co.
That's right. Not .com, just .co.
Right.
So you may have tried to email us before. We put that .com on there, the M on there, and go through. But anyway,
leave that M off.
Get a hold of us. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Anything you've seen weird. UFO, alien, Bigfoot, Dogman, anything
Paranormal.
strange.
Anything. Yeah.
Ghosts. Yeah, anything. Just anything out of the ordinary. So, all right. With that, my friend, I say we get out of here. You ready to go?
Yep. See you.